Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly series of Shirim on the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom commentary to the Idraba. And today we are moving into the next stage of Olam HaTikun, the world of rectification. We've been speaking about the original desire towards creation and the chaotic stirrings through which creation begins to take its initial steps. But the ultimate purpose is Tikkun HaOlam. The ultimate purpose is rectification. And rectification, we're entering into this week's Parsha, Vayishlach, which speaks about the death of the Edomite kings. The entire secret of rectification is how we tame the chaos of Olam HaTohu. Olam HaTohu was the unbridled measure of lights coming down into reality with containers, with vessels that were not strong enough to hold it. And being that the ultimate purpose of creation is to ensure that there is a balance between the lights and the vessels, the fixing of the world is creating vessels that are capable of holding the light. Unlike the world of Tohu, where the vessels fall apart and they break because the light was mismanaged. In the world of rectification, there's going to be a balancing act between the light and the vessels, between the source from above and the receptivity from below. This is what tikkun means. In all places that we see the word tikkun, rectification, it means that it serves as a minimization for the sake of revelation. When there's too much light, that light cannot be revealed in any formidable vessel because the vessel would be negated by the intensity of the light, as we saw in the world of chaos, as we saw prior to the Tzimtzum. To effectuate the balance in which the human being is capable of engaging in volitional behavior, choosing good so that we can experience the greatest measure of goodness, there needs to be a balance between revelation and concealment. Too much revelation would negate any choice. Too much concealment would negate any choice. Therefore, there has to be the mitgala, there has to be the balancing act, there has to be the equal measure of light and darkness, at least from the human perspective, so that we can volitionally choose. The vessels are rectification devices. They're tikkunim. They're garments that conceal in order to reveal that light in a measurable way. And so the tikkunim, the beginning of the rectifications, are the next stage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's unfolding process into reality, which is that now this infinite light that is coming down into existence at all times is going to be seen through particular vessels, through particular lenses and veils that enable it to be reduced so that it can be revealed in an appropriate and manageable way. One of the ways in which these tikkunim take shape in the clearest way is the partsufim, the configurations through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in existence and by way of his governance of existence, that all begin to appear in an organized way in the world of Atzilus, meaning to say, Olam HaTikun is taking the chaotic broken vessels and it's creating configurations. It's building partsufim, archetypal modalities through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals his infinite light. These partsufim, these 5 partsufim, are going to create the fulfillment of each and every world. But for the Ramchal, and what we're going to be seeing is that the partsufim, other than just being the ontological ground of the worlds, meaning to say the materiality of existence in an invisible way that we don't have a grasp of, there's also the secret of understanding our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by way of these individuated partsufim. So the partsufim are both the architecture of existence, and all we have in that space is what the Arizal tells us. But at the same point, there's also a way of understanding what they mean for us and our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the partsufim are also going to show the way in which Hashem reveals himself to us. These partsufim, these configurations, these systems that compose each and every world, they're a byproduct of Olam HaTikun. It's only the reduction of the infinite light that allows for these particularized valences and shapes through which God reveals himself in a particularized way that they can come into being. We know the names of the partsufim because we've spoken about them in the past, but we haven't seen them yet in the Idra Rabbah. We know that there's the parts of Keser, there's the parts of Chachma, there's the parts of Bina, there's the parts of Zer Anpin, and there's the parts of Malchus. In the language of the Idra Rabbah, the parts of Keser is going to be referred to by 2 names, Atik Yomin and Arich Anpin. The parts of Chachma is going to be referred to as Abba, as that masculine fatherly expression of quintessential information. Bina is going to be referred to as Ima. that formative process and that gestation process that takes shape within the mother. Zer Anpin is going to be the lower countenance, meaning to say the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself by way of diminution so that it can be received on a cause and effect type level. And then there's going to be Malchus itself. So the first parts of the loftiest parts of is the parts of Keser. And then descending from Keser is going to be Chachma and Bina and Zer Anpin and Malchus. The secret of the partsufim and the interconnections of all of the partsufim is that each and every partsuf is in relationship with the other partsufim. But the loftiest partsufim are the interiority of all things, and then the externalized partsufim are the engarbment, the levushim, that conceal and reveal the innermost partsuf. So in descending levels, the highest parts of Keser, so the top of Keser is going to be revealed, and then the lower part of Keser is going to be a garment around the innermost part of Keser so that that leg of Keser can be revealed. And then Chachma or Abba is going to come along and it's going to become a garment to the light of Keser. And then Ima is going to come along and she's going to be a garment to the light of Chachma. And then Zer Anpin is going to come along and that's going to be a garment to the light of Zer Anpin. And then Malchus is going to come along and it's going to be a garment to Zer Anpin itself. And so each and every one of the partsufim, like a nested system, are both engarbing the interior level and also revealing the interior level in a measurable way externally. And so the lower down we go in terms of our orientation to the partsufim, like Zer Anpin and Malchus, which are theoretically the lowest two partsufim, that's already the Hanhaga. That's where we encounter God in ways of concealment and constriction. But the higher we go along the rung, the more ancient we go back to the Seder HaHishtalshelus, we come to find the parts of Keser. And by the place of Keser, that's where we find the illumination of divine light in its truest form, which is the ever-present nature of divinity. And even though when it gets engarbed by the lower partsufim, that's no longer accessible in a revealed way, nevertheless, we always maintain the deep awareness that at the innermost point of the entire system is the light of Keser. Now, Keser, for our sake, as the Arizal describes to us in Shar Mem Beis in Eitz Chaim Kadisha, is going to have an inside and an outside, or an upper level and a lower level. Because Keser is an in-between that serves to connect the higher world to the lower world. Anytime that we reach the bottom of a higher level and the beginning of a new level, we're encountering Keser. Keser is a memutza hamechaber. It's a bridge that bonds two opposing levels, and because it's a bridge that bonds opposing levels, it has to have a relationship to both levels. It has to be related to the higher level that it's coming from, and it has to be related to the lower level that it's going towards. And these two elements of the memutza, of this bond, this double bonded bridge of Keser, is going to be the lowest of the higher level and the highest of the lower level. When it comes to the lowest aspect of the higher level, meaning that infinite space that Keser is drawing down from, it's going to be referred to as Atik Yomin. It's from a time beyond time. It's from a part of a system that's no longer present within the system that we have access to. It's beyond our orientation. The light of Atik Yomin is something that's removed, it's ne'atak, it's transcendent to all of the terms and conditions through which we live, but nevertheless, we're going to see miraculously it still has a relationship with the terms and conditions that are totally separate from it. That's the loftiest part of, that's the lowest part of the higher level. That's Atik Yomin, that's the innermost point of Keser. Arich Anpin is when from within that innermost point of Keser, there now begins a new level, which is the highest point of the lower level, and that's what we call Arich Anpin, the externality of Keser. And so Keser as the bond, as the bridge that connects the infinite light to measure and containment and constriction for the sake of rectification, is going to have a two-sided element to it. The innermost point is Atik Yomin, which is the Malchus of the higher worlds, which is going to be the lowest level of the higher levels. That's the interiority of Keser, that's Atik Yomin. And Arich Anpin is going to be the highest part of the lower worlds, which is going to be the initial emergence of a desire, which is going to be Arich Anpin. And what we're going to see from the Ramchal here, and the reason we're doing so much of a hakdama to this is because this is not simply incidental. This rests at the bedrock of what the Ramchal is giving us in Adir BaMarom, and it ultimately rests at the bedrock of what we're understanding from all of the tzaddikim who travel and draw from the path of the Ramchal and from the depths of the Arizal, which is revealing the ultimate goodness at the core of all things. That what the Ramchal is going to show us, based on the Ijra Rabbah here, is that once we're dealing with the system in an organized way, once we're in the space of the rectification of the worlds where there are partsufim and there's configurations and there can be a relationship and there's a rectification that's taking place and there's no longer this overwhelming chaos, the beginning point that we typically start with is going to be Arich Anpin. That's going to be the highest part of our system, the lowest part of Keser, the externalization of Keser, because we're starting from the beginning. We're not orienting ourselves back to an ancient past that we don't have access to, but we know is still accessible. We start from where we have a point of orientation to. But that notion that we only start with Arich Anpin limits the system because it's still constricted and limited to the tippy top of itself, and it doesn't have access to that which precedes it, which is infinite in relationship to it. And enter in the secret of Atik Yomin, the secret of the lowest part of the higher worlds, which is that whenever we have access to the external nature of Keser, which is Arich Anpin, which is the orientation point from which we begin with, even the loftiest part of ourselves, we have the ability of schlepping down and drawing down and allowing there to be a breakthrough from beyond the boundary of the innermost point of Atik, which is from the level beyond. We have the ability of drawing down infinitude, something that far exceeds the system in which we operate, and drawing that light into the system in which we operate, which reveals, obviously, the fact that as systematic as the system appears to be in its systematicity, nevertheless, there's always something that could come along and reveal that the entire system means absolutely nothing, because ultimately the light of the infinite has power to overcome everything. That's the light of Atik Yomin. That's the point of nitzchias, of infinitude, of eternity, dripping down into the order of time. And what the Ramchal is giving us here is the fact that don't be mistaken, now that you're in the world of rectification, now that you're in the world of Arich Anpin, of a measurable, intelligible way of relating to God by way of the partsufim, by way of measurable expression, never forget the fact that all measurability, all expression is rooted in and descendant from a place that cannot be expressed, a place of infinitude that negates all possibility of expression. That the light of the infinite, as expressed in Atik Yomin and Nitzchias, and that drip that comes down from the worlds all the way above, the olamos of Ein Sof, that reveals to us how, no matter how serious we take the system, there's always something that has the ability to reveal that the system is not meant to be taken seriously. But the seriousness of the system takes that into consideration, meaning to say Atik Yomin expresses itself within Arich Anpin. And this gives us hope. This gives us the promise that no matter what, we always have an access point to an inner light of goodness that exceeds the entirety of our point of reference. And this is the beginning of the secret of drawing down Atik Yomin into Arich Anpin, of revealing the ancientness of the interiority of Keser, in spite of the fact that it's removed by way of a transcendent distance from the system in which we operate. Nevertheless, it remains and it continues to give expression, and it reveals that nothing is ever gone, and all of the infinite light of Choykatoy Blahetiv and the ultimate goodness of complete and utter nullification in the face of divine capital N nothingness, the pleasure of that revelation of the nothingness, Le'esaneg al Hashem, that always remains part of the system. And so this is the language of the Ijra Rabbah. And every word, as the Ramchal has already showed us over and over in this book, that each and every word that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was drawing down in the Ijra Rabbah is precise, and it holds worlds upon worlds of meaning and essential secrets that can be revealed by way of it. Nothing is by happenstance. Tana b'tzniusa detzafra. It was taught in the modesty of the book. And we're going to see the difference between the modesty of the book and the book of modesty. We know that there's tzafra tzniusa. And over here, we see that there's a tzniusa tzafra. And we're going to see how this modesty of the book is ultimately the commentary on the book of modesty. Atika da atikin, ancient one of ancient ones. Sitra de citrin, concealment within concealment, tamir de tmirin, hiddenness within hiddenness. Itatkin ve'izdamnin. Rectifications were applied and it began to appear. Koloimar, ishtachach. The Zohar HaKadosh says that means that it can be found now. There's an access to it. There's an access to that ancient light of ancientness. But lo yishtachach mamish, but it can't be fully accessed. It's only accessed by way of concealment. Aval itkan velo diyodale mishum dahave atik da atiken aval betikune yada. It's rectified, but it's not known whatsoever because of its transcendental ancientness. But nevertheless, by way of the rectifications and those concealments, it's known. Kechad Sabed de Sabin, it's known as like the grandparent. Atik me Atikin, ancient one of ancientness. Tamir de Tmirin, hidden of hiddenness. Ibitikuna Yadia velo Yadia. Its rectifications are known and not known at the same time. Mari de Chivar Kasu, those who are attached to whiteness and illumination cover over it. V'chezu busta da anpe, and the redness of the face begins to appear. Yosef al korsaya deshviven achveloin. He sits on his throne of flames in order to reduce and sweeten the severity. Arba mea alfe almin is pashta chavira de golgalta dereisha 400,000 worlds extend from the whiteness and the illumination of the Golgotha of the head, and from the illumination of this whiteness. From this place, the tzaddikim are going to draw forth the 400 worlds of future pleasure that they're going to experience. So, Zakt the Heilige Ramchal. The words that we're going to focus on are the beginning of that Zohar. Tana b'tzniusa tetzafra. It was taught in the modesty of the book. So what does it mean it was taught in the modesty of the book? Says the Ramchal, V'amar teina b'tzniusa tetzafra, that in the modesty of the book. V'ha'inyan ki kol asfarim asher na'asu al yedei Rashbi hinehem tikunim gedolim nivnu al pi ha'ma'oris ha'elyonim v'seder ha'orisehem. Like we explained so much at the beginning of this series, that all of the books that were written by Rashbi v'Chavera of the light of the Zohar were not simply literary expressions of Torah, no matter how lofty that might be, but rather they were rectifications that were fundamentally connected to the particular emergence of light in that moment. And the way in which Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was able to capture that illumination, the Ma'oros Ha'elyonim, and the process in which they reveal themselves, create the differentiation of the books of the Zohar. Because there's many different expressions and strata within the Zohar. There's the Gufa Zohar, there's Tikunei Zohar, there's Safed Tzniusa, there's the Idra Rabbah, there's the Idra Zuta, there's the Idra Demishkana, there's the Raya Mehemna. Now, the Zohar is Ikari Shabbakulam, says the Ramchal. The Gufa Zohar, the Sefer Zohar that we find, is the most fundamental part. That's the guf, that's the essential light of the Zohar. V'yesh Raya Mehemna, B'sod HaPikudin, and there's also Raya Mehemna, which is the secret of the mitzvos. V'yesh Tikunim, and there's the rectifications. Ach Safed Tzniusa hu B'sod Klalos HaTorah, B'yesod Ima. Safed Tzniusa, the book of modesty that the Gra wrote a fundamental Perush on, and the Arizal wrote a Perush on. Safed Tzniusa, which Rav Chaim Volozhiner expresses as the Mishnah of the Zohar HaKadosh, that represents the Klalos HaTorah, the general principles of the Torah as they're found to be a Soid De'ima prior to the emergence of the Torah itself. In Zer Anpin, it's the basic principles. The 5 prakim, the Gra says, of Safed Tzniusa correspond to the Chamishe Chumshei Torah of Bereshit, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim. It represents the entirety of the Torah. That's Safed Tzniusa. V'hainu shehi nechlala kula sham. It's written very tersely in small words, but nevertheless, everything is contained within there. But what we find, and this is what the Gra reveals, that in spite of the fact that it's so short and so compressed and written so tersely, nevertheless, it holds all of the illumination. It holds all of the possibility of the light that is going to emerge from within it, inside of it. Everything is contained there by way of shorthand. And it's the 5 prakim of Tzafed Tzniusa corresponding to the 5 books of the Torah. But like we said, it's written very tersely. It's not written clearly. And Rashbi and his Chaveirov would sit and they would darshan Safed Tzniusa, and they would learn out all of the pratim that were contained within those klalim. When the Chaver would get together and they would learn Safed Tzniusa, so the teachings that they would draw out are referred to as Tzniusa Tzafra, the modesty of the book. Meaning to say that which is hidden within the Sefer Ditzniusa, which is the Tzniusa Sifra, which is what is being drawn out by the future generations that are learning it and finding new principles. That's what Tzniusa Tzafra is. That's what it meant when they were uncovering the latent concepts that were hidden within the very short language of Tzafra Ditzniusa. That's why it's written over here, Tzniusa Tzafra, because they're learning out the secrets of Tzafra Ditzniusa. Because the goal of Rashbi was not just to offer these hidden words that didn't provide illumination as they were in there. But they also wanted to add, Rashbi wanted to add the explanations and the commentary and the drawing out of the ideas that were already contained within the basic principles of that Sefer. This is referred to as the modesty of the book. The Ramchal continues. So, what was taught b'tzniusa d'tzafra? What was Rashbi v'chaverov drawing out of the tzafra d'tzniusa? Atika da atikin, sitra da sitrin, tamir da tmirin, etatkin v'izdamnin. Atika da atikin. It's a double language of ancientness. There's the first external level of ancient, and then there's the ancient within the ancient. So there's two levels. Atika da atikin, the most ancient, that's engarbed within that which is least ancient. Sitra the citrin, same thing, that which is most concealed within even a level that's called concealed. Tamir de tmirin, meaning a tamiru de tmiru, a hiddenness of hiddenness that's engarbed by an external level of hiddenness. Elahim hamilos hashnuyas lefi divrei hasefer sham. These are the words that were expressed in the Sefer Ditzniusa. And what Rashbi comes along and he says, so what does it mean, etatkin ve'izdamnin? What does it mean that these lofty lights of Keser are going to be available to us? It's present and it's not present. It's present in the scene, but it's also not revealed in the scene. Meaning to say the lights of Keser extend from the previous levels and they descend downwards into the next level, in spite of the fact that their appearance does not negate the possibility of the next level emerging. If the light of Keser and the level of Atik Yomin was revealed fundamentally within the system of the Seder HaHishtalshelus, so then it would be very difficult for us to ever talk about any other partsufim emerging because the light of Atik Yomin would negate it. So therefore, it can't be fully present. But at the same point, we can't say that it's not present, because if it's not present, then it's disconnected from the levels above it. And therefore, what we find in the Zohar HaKadosh is a liminal language that always captures both studim of itself. It's revealed and it's not revealed. It's hidden and it's not hidden. It's rectified and it's not rectified, which means to say that the light of Keser is going to emerge into the system as it expresses itself, but in a hidden way so as not to overwhelm. But at the very same point, we're going to ever be aware of its hidden presence. Va'inyan hu, says the Ramchal, kimashana asalamata ba'archan ben da'atzilus, who told us ha'ab shel pnimius ha'ak v'ze be'emes soid gadol ma'od. Here the Ramchal, if I'm understanding it properly, what we're seeing from here is as follows. The Ramchal already told us that when it comes to the hidden ab, the hidden shame of Ayin Beis, of Yud Vav Dalid, Hey Yud, Vav Yud Vav, Hey Yud, which represents the original Or Haganuz that was contained within the interiority of Adam Kadmon, that we said already that never actually enters into the scene. That's the Or Haganuz that was revealed for a moment, but then it was fundamentally concealed until the future revelation. That hidden light, that Or Ein Sof of Atika da Atikin, that Or Ein Sof of the Ab in Pnimius of Adam Kadmon, which is the Chachma of Adam Kadmon, Kaviyachol, which is not yet revealed. What the Ramchal is saying is that light, that innermost light, that Or Haganuz, which is not revealed yet, is the source of all of the illuminations that are going to be taking place within the graspable level of Keser in the world of Atzilus, which is Arach Anpin. Meaning to say that whenever we're talking about Arach Anpin, which is the Keser of the graspable level that we have access to, that already tells us that we're speaking on limited levels. Because if we have access to it, then we're speaking on a limited level. But what the Ramchal is telling us is that in truth, the limited level of Arach Anpin and Keser is in fact being drawn from the Pnimius of Ab in the Pnimius of Adam Kadmon, which shows how the revealed system is still drawing its sustenance from within that inner interiority, which is not yet revealed, that infinite light, that Or Haganos, meaning to say that there's always a drip or a drop of the Ab Hapnimi of Adam Kadmon, which is Choy Katoiv Lehetiv, which is the Or Haganos, which is the fundamental light of Rowan Misoif HaOlam Ad Soifo, that in spite of the fact that it doesn't enter into the scene in any revealed way, nevertheless, by way of hiddenness, that is what is giving shape to the revealed expression of Keser. That everything that's going to take shape down below in the world of Atzilus, which is the Arich Anpin of Atzilus, who told those ha'ayin beis shel pnimius ha'adam kadmon v'zeh be'emes soid gadol ma'od. It's in truth just an extension and an emergence of that innermost light of the Shem Havaya spelled out with Yudin, which is the Ab ha'pnimi in the innermost place of Ak, which is the Or Haganuz, the ability to see from one end of the world to the other, to live in Nitzchias. That's the driving engine behind all revelation, and that in truth is a very, very big secret. Da ki ela hatikunim sha'anu maskirim. These rectifications that we're discussing now, these tikkunim that are going to be revealed, their true secret is measurement and limitation that is applied to them so that they have the ability of expressing themselves in organized graspability. The tikkun, like we said, contains in order to reveal. V'hine arich anpin atzmuso ena musag klau. The innermost interiority of Arich Anpin, which is going to be Atik Yomin, that's not grasped in any way. Its etzem is not grasped. You don't have access to the interiority of Keser. But when the measurements and the engarbment of measure and shiur is applied to them for the sake of its revelation down below, that revealed level, in spite of the fact that it's a level below the interiority of Atik Yomin, nevertheless, because it's revealing the light of Atik Yomin, it's going to work in accordance to the innermost quality of Atik Yomin. Ve'al yedeihem hu noida umusad. And it's specifically by way of the rectifications and the containment measures that we're going to come to have any grasp of that innermost light. All we have the ability to grasp is that light of Atik Yomin that is shown through the levushim of Arich Anpin and all of the tikkunim as they express themselves. V'hine la'atzmus Arich Anpin she'ena musag anu korem atika. That hidden essential light of Arich Anpin, which is the light of Atik Yomin, that is not grasped by us, that we refer to as Atika, that which is removed, that which is ancient, almost vaye'etak misham, as if it distanced itself from that place. V'ha'emes ki Atika rotzaloymar zakein achu melashon he'etak perush hisroimumus ve'he'elem. Because the truth of the matter is that even though Atika can be understood as meaning old, which means that it's part of the system, it's just old, the truth of the matter is that its essential language is a melashon of a he'etek, a removal. Perish hisroimumus ve'he'elim, a transcendental level of concealment, meaning to say that it's removed from the system. Kiloshoinam zal dvarim shehi'itik mebirusam. In the Yerushalmi, it talks about things that have lost their clarity, and it uses a language of he'itik mebirusam. They've been removed from their clarity. So we see that the innermost quality of Keser, which is Atik Yomin, is something that's not only old as if it were parcel of the system. It's just the oldest part of the system, but in truth, it's transcendentally removed from it. Because really, when we want to talk about the ancient nature of Keser, which is Arich Anpin also, it's old, but it's part of the system, we refer to it as Sabed Sabin. It's a grandfather there because it's in relationship to Abba Ve'ima, which are Chachma and Bina, which are also part of the system. But over here, when we use the language of Atika and Ne'etak, it's referring to that innermost quality of the infinite light garbed within Atik Yomin, that's not part of the system, but it's being drawn down into the system. Aval kan hizkir Atika l'seid ha'elem she'amarti. Over here, the Ijer Rabbah is talking about the source of all things, which is the inner interiority of the Shem Ayin Beis as it expresses itself in the interiority of Adam Kadmon, of Roim Sofa Olam Ad Sofo, of seeing everything in the light of Or Ein Sof Kavyochel. That's what we're referring to here in the language of Ha'elem. Ach lebechinasoi mashu mastir ha'aroisav b'koyach tikunim ela lios musad b'tatoinim lezekor sitra de citrin v'u bechinas hastaro b'tikunim. The Zohar Kadosh continues, and it says that with regards to this Atika, the Atikim, this ancientness, when it comes to its revelations, when it comes to Arachanpin, when it comes to the way in which it's going to reveal itself in Metzias, so we refer to it as being able to be grasped by the lower levels because it's contained within Sitra the Citrin. It's that which is hidden within concealment. The hiding or the levush, which is what diminishes its infinite light, is what enables it to be revealed. That's the secret of Hastaru B'tikunim. The hidden ancient light of infinitude of the Ayin Beis within the Pnimius, the Adam Kadmon, which is that source of Or Haganuz, it's revealed in a concealed way. Through the veils of concealment is the only way we have access to it. These two levels, meaning the interiority of the Shem Ab of Yud Hey Vav Hey B'Milo Yudin, which represents the purest form of Chesed as it exists within Pnimius the Adam Kadmon, which is corresponding to Atik Yomin. There's also going to be an element of that Shem that emerges outwards, which can be referred to as the way it reveals itself in the Anhaga. At this point, we have no ability to really talk about the differentiation of levels at this lofty level. Liyot Barum Shel Olam. Leshem Shabbat Chaloma spends a lot of time discussing this element. All we can say is Sitra de Citrin. There's a concealment within the concealment, and the concealment valves enable that innermost concealment to be revealed so that it's a hiddenness that's revealed to us by way of hiding the depth of its hiddenness, which enables it to be revealed. The levushim shahatodo shalohim atikunim shal archan pen da'atzilus. This initial act of containment of that hidden quality of Atik Yomin, which were corresponding to the shame of Ab in the innermost territory of Adam Kadmon, which is the Choy Katoy B'Lahetiv, which is the illumination of all light, and Kol Mad Avid Rachman Letav Avid. It's engarbed within these Tikunim of Atzilus, which are Arach Anpin, which we're going to see are the highest levels of our graspability. And therefore we have to know, says Ramchal, and so do not make a mistake about it. The revelation of these rectifications, which are the containment and diminishment and containment of this uppermost light, it's only emergent as a result of the desire of the uppermost light to be known from within the interiority of Adam Kadmon, which is the secret of Atik Yomin, which is that innermost light of Or Ein Sof Kavyachol, and Tainug, which is dripping down into the system. V'imkein Amar Shazeh Ha'atika Da'atikin Sitra de Sitrin. So this is the language of the Zohar, that this ancientness within ancientness, which is the secret of the interiority of Keser, which is Atik Yomin, Sitra de Sitrin, it's concealed, but it's concealed within containment valves, which allow it to be revealed, which is the secret of the Shem Ayin Beis in two of its elements, Beis B'chinoisav. Etatkin v'izdamnin, meaning to say it's only through the rectifications and the containment that allows that innermost light to be revealed, that it can be revealed and rectified down below, meaning to say that it reveals itself in the world of Atzilus. And once it's revealed in the world of Atzilus, then we experience Keser as Sabed de Sabin, meaning to say that it's the highest level of the lowest level, which is that Arach Anpin. Which is when that light of the interiority of Keser breaks through the brain-body divide, Kavyachol, and it enters in and expresses itself by way of Arach Anpin, as we're going to see later on. What we have to understand in all of this is what we see here is that this innermost light that's still contained within the entirety of Adam Kadmon, which means that it's not subject to any concealment whatsoever, and it represents the machshava keduma of Ak, which is all of the goodness available, and Royin Mesoifa Olam Ad Sofo, and the secret of Einon Muvado and Choy Katoy B'Lahetiv, and the ultimate goodness at the core of all things. Prior to Tohu, prior to rectification, it wasn't revealed. It was completely absent from the scene. But now, after the world of Nikudim, once it's redeemed and it's revealed through Akudim, Nikudim, and Berudim, we have more of an access point to this innermost light, this innermost quality of the Shem Havaya of Yudin, which is Ab. But we're not able to contemplate this too much. Hamaskil means that only by way of the contemplation on the level of Arach Anpin, which is almost like Bina in correspondence to the innermost interiority of Atik, which is like Chachma, that we have to have our Bina to be maven, that innermost light. And this is the secret. This is the secret that's revealed in the modesty of the book. Zok the Heilige Ramchal, based on the Idir Rabba, we're going weiter. Itatkin is damnin. This innermost light of Atik Yomin, the light of Or Ein Sof Kavyachol, the Tainuk Ha'amiti, extends down and it garbs itself within reality. Kechad Sabbath the Sabbath. Now it's revealed like Arach Anpin, which is the highest level of the lower level. It's the ancient level of Keser, but it's still ancient in relationship to all of the other levels. It's not Atik Yomin, it's Arach Anpin. Atik me Atikin. Tamir mitmirin, bitkuna yada velo yada. Zok the Heilige Ramchal. It's rectified, there's containment, and now it appears available to us. It's present and it's not present. Baka v'loy baka. It's there and it's not there at the same time. The light of Pnimius of Ab from the Pnimius of Adam Kadmon, which is is present in spite of the fact that it never departed away from its interiority and its concealment. It's there and it's not there at the same time. It's not fundamentally revealed or fundamentally grasped in spite of the fact that it's really revealed and it's really grasped. Ella is damnin. It's there, it's present, it's ready at hand to be experienced, meaning to say it's known. What does it mean that it's known? It means that we know that there's an ab which is the yud, vav, dalet, hey, yud, vav, hey, yud, which is the chaykat lahetiv. We know of its existence. Umusag tzatz mikoyach tikunav, and we know this. This is why we have the ability to be moiser nefesh on the deep belief of chaykat lahetiv. Because of this, it's noitzitus of this innermost light of Atik Yomin. It's grasped by its rectifications. Hainu lefi pu'uloisav behem loy lefi atzmusa. We don't have a grasp of the innermost light as it exists in the Or HaGanuz, but we do have a hitznoitzitzitz of it that gives us the ability to experience it by way of tikkunim. Why? Mipnei shetamid hu ha'ab hu atik me'atikin v'hu inyan hisalmo. That in truth, this innermost quality of Atik Yomin is Atik me Atikin. It's the innermost quality of the innermost quality, meaning the innermost quality on the level of Atzilus is Arach Anpin, but interior to that is the secret of Atik Yomin, which is the innermost quality of the Shem of Ab, which is the Inyan His Almo. It's the concealment of itself, that concealed presence of it, which is not being revealed in any revelatory way, but nevertheless, its presence is always expressing itself. Ella shebitkunayu yada v'lo yada. The rectifications enable it to be known and not known at the same time, meaning to say it's known, we know that it's there, but we don't know it by any actualized way. That in truth, we know that this is where we come from. We come from the goodness, we come from this ultimate secret of Atika da Atikin, but we don't have access to it. And it gives birth to this thing called Sabbath de Sabin. Sabbath de Sabin. The Saba is Arachanpin. Abba v'imar chochman bina. Saba de Sabin is the fact that the innermost light of Atik Yomin gives shape to Arachanpin. V'teda shagam Abba v'imahim k'moy Arachanpin b'soitza. The reason we're saying Saba de Sabin is because the Saba is Arachanpin and Abba v'ima, they're both revelations in the lower Hanhaga, but they're not rooted in the upper realms of Atik Yomin. But nevertheless, even though they're not removed like Atik Yomin, Arach Anpin and Abba Ve'ima, they still are Lamala Meha Hanhaga. They're still the loftiest levels of what we're able to grasp. Aval Hu Shoyresh Lahem. They're already shaykh to the system. Arach Anpin, Abba Ve'ima, they're already in the world of Atzilus, but Atik Yomin is already a drip from that which precedes the world of Atzilus. Al Kain Nekran Saba de Sabin. This is why it's referred to as the Saba of the Sabin. Besoide His Almo Nikra Atika Me Atikin. Its orientation to how it shapes the system, Atik is referred to as the grandfather of the grandfather, meaning to say it is transcendent to Arach Anpin and Abba Ve'ima. In terms of its revelation to us, it's referred to as Atik me Atikin, concealed upon concealment. Beside his slabshus ab nikra tamir detmirim, but the fact that it engarbs itself within this original shame of the Milo Yudin, of the Ayin Beis, of the Choykatov Lehetiv, it's referred to as that which is concealed within concealment. But through its tikkunim, through the containments for the sake of revelation, yada v'lo yada. Meaning it's known in the fact that it's known, but it's also not known in the fact that we don't have access to it. It's present and it's not present at once. And don't be mistaken by what I referred to earlier on, that Sabbath Sabin was referring to Arach Anpin, because it's the loftiest level of the revealed level of Keser. And over here, I'm referring to this as Atik. We can apply the ancientness and the removal to Atik Yomin. It's ancient and it's removed. Hazikna v'ha'etek, hainu haroimimus, meaning to say it's ontologically removed and it's also removed by way of time and distance. Both of those are true when it comes to Atik Yomin. And Zikna is also true when it comes to Archanpin, even though the Roimimus is not true. This is where we're going to refer to, generally speaking, as Archanpin as Atika, because Archanpin is removed also, even though that's the main point that we're going to be talking about. But when we want to make sure that we're revealing that at the heart of Arach Anpin, there's this innermost point of Atik Yomin, which breaks the system while enabling the system to continue to function, as Naskir Atika al Bechinas Arimus. That's where the Atikin is going to refer to that transcendental distance, the Saba al Hazikna, the Havein Hetiv. Ezra's Hashem, we should be Zoicha to number one, be correct in this reading. To number two, understand that this is going to be the secret that gives us the ability to perpetually remember that Choy Katayv Lahetiv, that Atik Yomin is schlepped down into Arich Anpin, which is really what all of Torah Chasidus is about, which is drawing down the Galgalta into the Moichas Timah through the Avir Dachya, through the Kruma da Avira, of drawing down that inner light of Eilamecha Tira B'chayecha down into our experience in this world, and living with that inner quality in spite of the fact that it's hidden within hiddenness. Nevertheless, we know that it's there, which means that we live kimei hashamayim al haaretz. A person lives in zmaniyut. A person lives in changes and the anxiety of change. But nevertheless, there's a drop of eternity that expresses itself downwards, which gives us the ability to continue eating from the Eitz HaChaim in spite of the fact that the levush and the garment of our experience is the Eitz HaDas. And the Ramchal is going to take us, Be'ezras Hashem, to a place where this becomes more and more practical for us, more and more real for us. Derech Hamuna B'charti. When we believe in this, we begin to have that secret hitznitzitz of what the Ramchal describes as the beginning and the purpose of all things, which is lehisaneg al Hashem, to find pleasure with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Be'ezras Hashem.